Good morning, excellencies, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, Nobel Laureate, I'd like to welcome you all to the Laureates and Leaders for Children Summit 2016. Even as we make advances in the fields of science and technology in the 21st century, millions of the world's children languish in poverty and deprivation. In many countries, they are trafficked, exploited, and denied their basic rights, even the right to education. Keeping this in mind, the underlying theme and guiding force of this summit is globalizing compassion for our children and building a child-friendly world. This unique and unprecedented gathering of Nobel laureates and world leaders, along with activists, change makers, and youth, are together today at this summit to pledge their support and build a strong moral platform to create awareness and commit themselves on behalf of the world's deprived children. We're very honored on this occasion to welcome the Honorable President of India, Shri Pranab Mukherjee. We warmly welcome him. We also welcome on the days His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Nobel Peace Laureate, Her Serene Highness Princess Charlene of Monaco, His Royal Highness Prince Ali bin Al Hussein from the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Her Royal Highness Princess Laurentien of the Kingdom of Netherlands, His Excellency José Ramos Horta, former President of Timor-Leste, and Mr. Imtiaz Ali, our young participant. I now request Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, Nobel Laureate, to make his welcome remarks.
Children of the world, Your Excellency, the President of India, Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, my fellow Nobel laureates, and respected leaders. I feel humbled and privileged to welcome you in the first ever Laureates and Leaders for Children Summit in India. India, which is the land of compassion, the land of love and humanity. This gathering is the testimony that only and only the compassion for children, the cause of children, can unite the world which we see today. Let me begin with a mantra in Rig Veda, one of the most ancient texts of wisdom. It says, Samano mantraha samiti samani samanam manah sa chittamesham samanen mantra mavi mantra eva samanen vo havisa johomi. It means common be our assembly in finding common solutions. Common be our minds and thoughts. Common be our will and resolve, and common be our present and future. Dear sisters and brothers, the idea of a united future has never been more urgently needed as today. the world has never been wealthier. It has never been more informed and advanced. But never before has the world been so conflicted. We are more connected, and yet many remain hard to reach. Millions of our children are being enslaved, trafficked, forced to live in abject poverty and hunger. They are dying of curable diseases and denied an education. Children are not responsible for any war or conflict in the world history, but they are the worst victims and further being victimized. This is unacceptable. This year, I met a Syrian boy, Your Excellencies, in a refugee camp in Germany. This 8-year-old boy has lost his legs and his father in a bomb blast. And he got separated from his mother in transit to Europe, sitting in a wheelchair. He asked, "What is my fault?" But he also expressed his hope. He said, "I wanted to go back home. I wanted to continue my schooling in Syria." These dreams and aspirations of millions of children, my dear friends, are possible to be fulfilled only with a common resolve, strong resolve. We need new solutions. Solutions that are bold and transformable. We need new partnership that is innovative and inclusive. We need new resources that are unconventional and sustainable. And we need new resolve that would be our will for children. 2 years ago in Stockholm and later in Lindau, I met Nobel laureates from different disciplines. And when I shared the stories of child slavery, they were saddened. And many of them got in disbelief. They asked, "Kailash, is it true that slavery does exist in this modern time? Are the children sold and bought in prices lesser than the animals?" It was quite emotional conversation, but I can feel compassion in them. And that compassion is the genesis of the idea of holding this assembly and creating a strong moral platform, inviting Nobel laureates and global leaders for one cause. You are the greatest moral, intellectual, and political leaders who are present here. You are the strongest voices of our times, and together we will turn the tide in favor of the most marginalized children. I look back 30 years. When I first rescued a group of 36 children, women, and men in a northern Indian state, I remember that it was very difficult to convince the people that this is slavery, this is wrong, this is an evil. But since then, we have gone a long way. We have seen in the world that how we were able to accomplish the decrease of child labor by 1/3, the decrease of out-of-school children by half, And so many other accomplishments have been made for children. But it is not enough. The forces that exploit our children are still stronger, and we are lagging behind. We need to reach out. The last child living in any vulnerability in any part of the world before the traffickers reach them. Before the fire of conflict turn our children into ashes, we have to rescue them. We have to act now. Childhood is indeed in danger, except where there is will. And the will is vain, except when there is wisdom. And the wisdom is futile, except that there is compassion. So this assembly is the assembly of compassion. And we have to create a world which is driven by compassion. Starting today, let us build a legacy that we wanted to leave behind. Our intellectual and moral might arrive at a rightful conclusion, and that is our children. I see a world where every child is free, safe, and educated. I see a world where justice guides the rule of law and that reaches to the last person of society, where the governments and intergovernmental organizations create holistic policies for the well-being of children. I see a world where science and technology play a pivotal role in creating systems that deter crimes, where through economic arguments we made children the beneficiaries of growth and development and not slaves of it. Dear friends, I see a world where businesses and corporations are driven by compassionate intelligence, where the profits and social good can coexist. And I see a world where children realize their right to education, right through education, and rights in education. My dear friends, I see a world where young people drive change. Some years ago, I remember rescuing a young girl from a stone quarry. She was the victim of intergenerational slavery. She was given an opportunity to go to school and be educated. And when she returned back to her village, she became the champion for child rights. This girl had a chance to address a very high-level group in the sidelines of United Nations General Assembly in New York, and that was on education. Looking at all the world leaders, she was surprised, rather mesmerized. She said that I have never seen so many white people. I have never seen so many rich people. I have never seen so many prime ministers and presidents. And then she asked, as a little girl, with my little resolve, if I could bring all 15 out of school children into classrooms, what about you, friends? She asked, that you can bring every single child to school. And I remember that moment when she made everyone speechless. Her question is still pertinent. Everybody has to do his or her bit, and that's why we are here. Sisters and brothers, These are the voices of change. We must listen to them. We must respond the voices, these innocent voices of children with action. Tomorrow, as most of you are aware, the history will witness the launch of the largest youth campaign for children, 100 million for 100 million. In the pith of all the noises around us, let us feel the music of the children's voices. The time has come to act with the strongest possible will. This is the place, and we are ones who are going to bend the arc of history in favor of all our children forever. Once again, I thank you so much for being here for a common cause and the cause of children. I'm extremely grateful to Honorable President of India, all the excellencies and royalties. I'm so thankful to all the leaders from all walks of life who are assembled here from dozens of countries. And I'm sure that when we go back, we will leave an unprecedented will for our children, and that would be our legacy for the future. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Satyarthi. It is now my honor to invite the Honorable President of India, Shri Pranab Mukherjee, to deliver the keynote address.
Good morning. His Holiness Dalai Lama, Her Serene Highness Princess Charlene of Monaco, His Royal Highness Prince Ali bin Al Hussein, Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Her Royal Highness Princess Launician of the Kingdom of Netherlands, and UNESCO Special Envoy on literacy or development. His Excellency Joshua Ramos Horta, former President, Diamond Leste, Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, distinguished participants, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a privilege for me to attend the opening session of the first ever Laureates and Leaders for Children Summit. At the start, I would like to congratulate Sri Kailash Satyarthi and the Children's Foundation in his name for taking these timely and thoughtful initiatives. An esteemed panel of laureates and leaders are attending this summit. The ideas that will generate from here should no doubt reach a wider audience. I welcome all the distinguished delegates from abroad, particularly the laureates and leaders of Children's Summit to India. My special greetings to the children and young people congregated here on this occasion. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, India is a microcosm of the world with huge diversity of racial groups, cultural patterns, beliefs, climates, topography, and even flora and fauna. Her 1.3 billion people belong to three major ethnic groups, speaking 122 languages and 1,600 dialects, following 7 religions. Her strength lies in her unique capacity to fuse apparent contradictions into constructive affirmations. This important conclave, held in our country, should be an ideal setting for deliberations of such wide importance. The core values of our civilization emphasize universal good welfare of all human beings. These values are intrinsic to the tenets of Alfred Nobel's will and the constitution of the fund that awarded, and I quote, prizes to those who during the preceding year shall have conferred the greatest benefit to mankind, unquote. It has become a tradition for the Nobel Peace Prize to be presented on the 10th of December. Also on this day, in 1948, the General Assembly of the United Nations had adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This day is celebrated every year as the Human Rights Day. I call upon this gathering to assimilate this day's significance for humanity in spirit. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, children comprise 1/4 of the total human population. Once Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, observed, and I quote, "Children are like birds in a garden and should be carefully and lovingly nurtured as they are the futures of the nation," unquote. Indeed, through diligent nurturing, children can blossom into fragrant flowers, spreading warmth and joy around. However, in this age, when technological development is spearheading human progress beyond one's imagination, it is disappointing to find many children deprived of opportunities to lead a decent life. There are children still struggling to meet their basic needs for survival. Child labor and bondage are still prevalent despite stringent laws. Problems of varying degrees afflict children, from the seemingly less severe, like bullying at school, to cases of the sexual harassment, child marriage and trafficking. Children are also denied education in several parts of the world. They are still suffering from malnutrition and are dying of preventable diseases. According to UNICEF, 80% of the child deaths occur in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. In regions marked by armed conflicts, violence, and insurgencies, children are the most affected. There are many children amongst refugees who face an uncertain future. I remember that Sri Satyarthi had raised an important point in his speech in Oslo in 2014. He observed, and I quote, "The children of our world are questioning our inactions and watching our actions," unquote. We cannot afford to fail our children. We cannot fail to deliver to them what is due to them. We cannot deprive them the future they can potentially have. In India, we are guiding by some powerful laws in this sphere. The Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2005 forbids the solemnization of marriage of a child below the age of 21 years for male and 18 years for female. The Indian Penal Code has provisions against offences like foeticide and infanticide. A national commission and state commissions for protections of the child rights and children's courts to provide speedy trial of different offences against children or of violation of children's rights have been constituted under a law enacted in 2005. The Juvenile Justice, Care and Protection Children's Act 2015 deals with juvenile in conflict with the law and children in need of care and protection. The Protection of Children from the Sexual Offences Act 2012 provides for the protection of the children from sexual assault and harassment. The Factories Act 1948 and the Child Labour Prohibition Act 1986 prohibits the engagement of children below 14 years in certain employments, including factories, and regulates their conditions of work in certain other employments. Let us commit ourselves to the noble task of fulfillment and protection of the child rights everywhere. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, laws will have the desired impact under two conditions. One, if they are properly implemented, and two, if they are complemented by the proactive policies. Programs and actions for children have to take center stage in national policy making. We have a shared responsibility to reduce the inequalities that harm the underprivileged children more than any other age group. The path towards an equal future will come through prioritizing. The disparities in education, health and poverty indicators will have to be eliminated. The factors hampering the progress of disadvantaged children will have to be removed. In this context, initiatives like a Promise Renewed movement, under which signatory nations have pledged doing everything possible to stop women and children from dying of causes that are easily preventive, are absolutely necessary. We indeed have a moral obligation towards our children, towards their development and security, and in giving them equal opportunity. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, education should be the strongest weapon in our fight against inequality. Education neutralizes any disadvantage and equalizes opportunities. We in India have prioritized education as one of the key factors for development. It is not a privilege of the elite, but a universal right. The Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act, 2009, obligates the state to provide education to children in the age group of 6 to 14 years. The Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan and midday meal schemes have aimed at universal access, retention, attendance, and quality of learning in the elementary education system of our country. Let our children have all the opportunities to grow with confidence. Distinguished delegates, participants, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our children will inherit a world that we would devote them. It is our responsibility to ensure that such a world is a better place than what we are given. Exploitation of resources and degradation of the environment is posing a serious challenge to sustainable development. It is manifested in the ill effects of climate change. Developing economies, which are closely tied to climate-sensitive sectors like agriculture and forestry, are more vulnerable to climate changes. A dual approach of preventing climate change and conserving adequate resources for future developmental needs is required. Efficient use of the natural resources is reflective of a society that is mindful of its responsibilities towards the present and future generations equally. Let us make this planet a better habitat for our children. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, citizens often seek wisdom and guidance from elders. I cannot foresee a better set of laureates and leaders present in this congregation, gathering to lend their valuable thoughts to the children. On this occasion, I am reminded of the Nobel Laureate Rabindranath Tagore's motto, Yatra Vishwa Bhavet Niram. It means where the whole world meets in a single net. The waybirds create a safety nest for their young ones. Let us create a free, safe, educated, healthy world for our children. In this conclave, gather your thoughts, speak your mind, indulge in debate and discussion, seek answers, develop a vision for a bigger and happier tomorrow. Wishing you all success, Godspeed in your endeavor. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Honorable President, for your valuable insight that will surely guide us through this summit and for action beyond. I now request His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989, to share his wisdom with us.
Dear respected President, And I usually start my talk with the word brothers, sisters. I really believe we are same human being, irrespective of what a nation, what religious belief, and sort of rank. These ranks, I really feel artificial, not much important. So actually we are same human being. I think including respected president, we are same way when we born. When we go, final farewell, same way, no differences. And I really feel a lot of problems we are facing due to global warming, these things, and some nature disaster. These are beyond our control. But many problems, including sort of there's some stories already sort of mentioned, the suffering or negligence about children. You see, many of these problems is our own creation. So logically, those problems which we human beings created, then we have this sort of responsibility, and also we have the ability to reduce these man-made problems. For that, we need vision. Vision brings some sort of method or different sort of effort. So in order to develop, I think, positive vision, we need compassion, sense of concern of others' well-being, on the basis of sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings, with that kind of sort of moral principle, and then vision naturally be constructive. Otherwise, this intelligence, human intelligence, marvelous intelligence, with anger, with hatred, then our vision sometimes, you see, create a lot of problem. So, I think human history, violence is, I think, part of human life. Look, 20th century. Immense violence, including use of nuclear weapon. And the 20th century, some historians say, over 200 millions of people killed through violence. If that kind of sort of immense sort of violence really create better shape of this world, then some people may say justify this violence. But that's not the case, obviously. Now, beginning of the 21st century, I think a lot of problem, a lot of violence. So now, we should not content our sort of the usual sort of way of thinking or way of life. If we just content think the situation as sort of today exists, then I think the event 20th century that may repeat this 21st century. I usually describe the 20th century becomes century of violence. Now, this 21st century must be century of peace. How to bring peace? Through prayer. I'm Buddhist monk. Suddenly, I sort of pray by daily practice. But in the terms of world affair, I pray, I'm skeptical. These problems started by human being. So we have the responsibility, not responsibility of Buddha or God. If this problem is some connection with God, then appeal to God, please bring peace. If we have the opportunity seeing Buddha, I'm Buddhist, seeing Buddha or seeing Jesus Christ, there are some other sort of religious sort of founders or teachers, if you ask, please bring peace, I think they may easily say, who created violence? You created. So you have the responsibility to solve this problem. So this 21st century should make peaceful century. Now, peaceful century, peace means inner peace. Without inner peace, impossible to create world peace, peaceful century. So we have to look our inner world. Anger is part of our life. But if you analyze, you say, what is the value of anger? No, it is some spontaneous reaction. Otherwise, anger often brings more negative effect, not much positive. So therefore, thinking through education, through awareness, the destroyer of inner peace, realize that. Irrespective of whether religious-minded or not. We are human beings. Now scientists, many scientists, especially brain specialists or the medical scientists, they say constant anger, constant fear, hatred, actually eating our immune system. So everybody is taking care of our own sort of physical, healthy physical. So we always rely on drugs or these things. But one of the important factors for a healthy body is peace of mind. Not talking about next life, not talking about the heaven or these things. Simply how to create happy, healthy body. And then now, I think many of you, I think the President also, I think may already know, I think one good news, since last 30 years, I have series of discussions with scientists. Now some scientists say through their sort of investigation, what is the basic human nature? They say, basic human nature is compassion, compassionate. This is hopeful sign. Now, education has the real responsibility. Education not only, oriented to material value. I think, unfortunately, existing modern education very much oriented about material value. So generation come through that kind of education, then their lifestyle, more materialistic lifestyle, and to create materialistic culture. I think that is one of the source of problem. Through education, if we have better awareness of the real troublemaker within ourselves, this destructive emotion, then pay some attention about inner peace through training, not through prayer, but through training, with understanding about the whole system of emotion. So now, if we make effort, peace, through education. I think since basic human nature is more compassionate, therefore there's a real hope. Now question is, people. Usually I describe the generation of 20th century and the generation of 21st century. Now, including respected president and our Nobel Laureates, you see, we are the generation of 20th century. And among the audience also, I think most of you, I think the generation of 20th century. 20th century gone. Only question of, you see, maybe some case 1 decade or 2 decades, some cases few years, then ready to say bye-bye. Now, the generation of 21st century, the younger generation, whose age below 30, 20, 15, that generation is really basis of our hope. If they make effort now, I think later part of 21st century can be more peaceful. So therefore, children become very, very important. So not only taking care of their physical well-being, but proper sort of education, more holistic education. That is, with the help of some educationists, some scientists, we already committed doing something, some research. So therefore, you see, your organization, I think a special sort of care for children is wonderful. I really appreciate it. Thank you. The children, as I mentioned earlier, basic human nature is more compassionate. The reason the scientist observed the innocent child, 5, 6 months old, language not yet developed. I also used to participate in that meeting. There's one very, very infant child. Huh? Have to stop? One of my weaknesses is, once I open my mouth, then blah, 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 go like that. That's my weakness. So I need to watch. You see, tell, oh, now time to stop. So in any way, at that meeting, this very, very infant young child, about 5 months old, one sort of cartoon, 2 children play together with smile. When that cartoon showed to the infant child, the child, you see, smiling. I saw smiling and expressed. Of course, the language not yet sort of developed, but the physical sort of language was showing smile, happy. Then another cartoon, 2 children. One child, you see, moving one ball up here. Another child, you see, against that, obstruct. So when that cartoon seen by that child, something negative attitude. Then, as I mentioned earlier, the peaceful mind, much better sort of health. So, healthy body, healthy mind, very close connection. So in that respect, I also, through my own experience, I can assure you, if you keep peaceful mind, your health certainly more healthier. Say, if your mind, some sort of disturbance, too much stress, too much anxiety, then they take refuge alcohol or drugs or tranquilizer, temporary method. Pay more attention about our inner peace. Ultimate source of inner peace, ultimate basis of inner peace is warm-heartedness. So, with that, we can develop a sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. Then, whenever you met people, always feel human brothers, sisters. So, that's my own experience. So my face, my health, except my knees, I think quite healthy. I have no special medicine. Just peace of mind that I think really makes differences. So therefore, children, the generation of the 21st century, I think should educate existing the different subject of modern education. On top of that, some education about our inner world, our mind, our emotion. So those organizations, individual or organization who take care about the child, please, not only is the Kasota, just give some facility. Not only that, think seriously how to educate these people on the basis of their basic good nature. I think children, very honest, I think very good. So they don't care what others of religious faith or nationality. So long you see child, show, smile, friendly attitude, play together. I think we need that. So I think unfortunately, basic human nature like that, but our existing education, gradually, you see, too much emphasis creation of division, we and they, neglect about oneness of humanity. Maybe wrong, that's my view. If you feel wrong, then please reject me. Anyone who wants to reject that, I'm glad. I think people agree that or support that. Thank you very much.
We thank you, Your Holiness, for your wonderful words of wisdom. I would now like to invite Her Serene Highness, Princess Charlene of Monaco, to make her special remarks.
Honourable Mr. President, Your Royal Highness, Your Excellencies, Nobel Laureates, ladies and gentlemen, I stand with you today in support of children's rights and to pay tribute to Kailash Satyarthi, who has rescued more than 85,000 children from exploitation, placed them in education, and pioneered India's first protection laws. I moved from Zimbabwe to apartheid South Africa in 1989 at the age of 11. There, I was introduced to racial segregation, and I suddenly found myself separated from other children. I witnessed the injustice of inequality, especially for children. That same year, the United Nations adopted the Convention on the Rights of the Child, a binding treaty which established universal rights for children. This treaty has become the most ratified human rights treaty in history. I am proud to now live in a country in which children's rights are at the top of the policy agenda. 2 weeks ago, we celebrated the 23rd anniversary of the Principality's accession to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and in 2015, Monaco ratified the Convention on Action Against Trafficking in Human Beings. In 2006, we hosted the Council of Europe Conference on Children's Rights, at which we launched a new program, Building a Europe for and with Children. This year, as a global ambassador for First Aid with the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, I launched a campaign to promote first aid for children by children. I am passionate about saving and protecting the future of our children. In 2012, I set up a foundation to end drowning, the third largest unintentional injury killer in the world. In 2012, an estimated 372,000 drowned. Here in India, drowning is the biggest accidental killer of children. These deaths are preventable. My foundation has worked tirelessly to reach over 100,000 people in 27 countries by teaching children to swim, to learn water safety techniques, and CPR. We are gathered here today as individuals who are committed to giving our time and expertise and to empower children. I wish to stress 2 key points. First, we must not see children simply as the beneficiaries of rights granted to them by adults. Instead, we should bear in mind that children have the right to be heard and a right to participate in the decisions that affect them. We should invest in children, believe in them, allow them to speak, and equip them with the knowledge and understanding of their rights. Secondly, I hope that this summit will capture the world's imagination and determination to practically help those children who do not have freedom that they deserve. Ensuring children's rights require moral leadership and action. It requires us to agitate indifference in order to bring hope to the forgotten and a voice to the unheard. For as Nelson Mandela once said, we owe our children, the most vulnerable citizens in any society, a life free from violence and fear. We owe our children a bright future, a future that they are empowered to shape, and one which they can live safe and fulfilling lives as active and responsible citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Highness. I now have the honor of inviting His Royal Highness Prince Ali bin Al Hussein, Director of the National Crisis Management Center, Jordan, of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan.
Your Excellency, the Honorable President of India, Your Holiness, the Dalai Lama, Your Royal Highnesses, the Honorable Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, distinguished Nobel Prize leaders, laureates and leaders, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I congratulate you, Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, and all the organizers for this initiative and for the excellent arrangements made for all of us. And I thank you, Your Honorable President, for so graciously receiving us. By hosting this important summit, you send a strong signal that you personally, and the government of India too, are determined to protect children from all the ills we will be discussing. I stand before you today not only humbled, but also saddened. Humbled because it's a unique honor to be here with such esteemed leaders and laureates who have achieved so much and to whom the world owes so much. And saddened because I come here burdened with the knowledge that despite the best efforts of passionate, dedicated, and inspirational individuals such as those gathered here today, children are suffering in my region and beyond. As we gather here today, many of us in this room, parents ourselves, we do so on behalf of child victims. Children who are victims of poverty and conflict, children who are victims of rape, turned into soldiers, or forced into prostitution. Children who have been enslaved into illegal forced labor, children who have been forcibly relocated. We gather on behalf of children who have lost their childhoods and on behalf of those who have lost their lives. We come with open minds, open hearts, and difficult questions. We might ask ourselves why so many refugees, for example, from Syria, Afghanistan, Somalia, or Rohingya Muslims and their children, cannot find a safe haven and are being turned away by some of the wealthiest countries of the world. Why the Middle East peace process is at a standstill, claiming daily victims, mostly among Palestinian children, and why teenagers from Britain, France, Australia, and the Middle East fall prey to the narrative of terrorist groups, how they are lured to become willing participants in horrendous acts perpetrated by the likes of Daesh. There can be no easy answers to the troubles facing the children of our world, but it seems clear to me that there is a deficit of dignity and hope. My father, the late King Hussein, worked tirelessly to bring about peace in our region. I will never forget his words as he stood before the world a year before his passing, saying, "We have no right to dictate through irresponsible action or narrow-mindedness the future of our children and our children's children. There has been enough destruction, enough death, enough waste, and it's time that together we occupy a place beyond ourselves, our peoples, that is worthy of them under the sun." I come from a small country, which is the third poorest country in water resources in the world. Our king, our government, and the people of Jordan are working to protect our country's stability in the midst of a troubled region. Relative to our population, our towns and villages are hosts to the largest number of refugees in the world, including nearly 2 million from Syria, in addition to the successive waves of Palestinian and Iraqi refugees we have hosted over the past decades and continue to host. Naturally, around half these numbers are children. A few weeks ago, I had the privilege of escorting His Excellency President José Ramos Horta for a visit to the Syrian refugee camp of Zaatari in northern Jordan. Around 80,000 people live there. The President and I were witnesses to how the Jordanian authorities, the UNHCR, and other UN agencies, with support from local and international NGOs, work around the clock with what resources they have to provide children with the food, shelter, healthcare, and education they need. They also do their best to allow these children to play or to be just children. I think many of us here today would agree that the root causes of many of the problems affecting the children of the world today can be found in three fundamental areas: poverty, inequality, and the absence of the rule of law. Many of us have tried with varying degrees of success to tackle aspects of these issues. My own personal modest contribution has been via the Asian Football Development Project, which I established in 2012. It's a program for children and teenagers built around the most popular sport in the world. The AFDP has worked alongside NGOs supporting minorities' rights in Malaysia, including refugees who are not recognized in their host countries, with NGOs in India, and it has worked also with an NGO to rehabilitate female victims of child trafficking in Cambodia. The AFDP also offers training and awareness to 5,000 boys and girls in the Zatari refugee camp I spoke of earlier. I've worked to extend this program to the entire region, and I think we have made reasonable progress. But of course, however noble our individual efforts are, they will never be enough. And that is why we owe it to our children to work together to do more, to do it better, and to do it faster. We are here because despite recent achievements, and there are many, there is still much to do to see tangible results at a scale that can make us look at the world we live in and say with confidence that our children, our future, and our humanity are safe. There have been a multitude of treaties, conventions, and agreements concerning children. In many cases, these have paved the way for improvements throughout the 20th century until now. The solutions offered are valuable guidelines and frameworks, but many remain unsigned, unratified, or unimplemented by prominent nations. But the core issue is not one of legislation as much as one of ethics and values. We need to place our human values at the center and be constantly alert and indignant towards all the violations of which children are victims, in order to fight what Pope Francis so wisely called the globalisation of indifference. And so our challenge here at the Laureates and Leaders Children's Summit is to allow our humanity to come to the fore. Alongside our experience, our idealism must coexist with our pragmatism. We must step away from indifference towards vulnerability, for to care is to be vulnerable, and to be vulnerable is to be uncomfortable. Our challenge will be to embrace the discomfort of looking the reality of our children's world squarely in the eye, holding its gaze, and then looking beyond that together to create a better future for all the children of the world. I am confident that this conference can and will have a concrete positive impact, and I take inspiration from the efforts of Mr. Kailash Satyarthi and his foundation to ensure that the International Labour Organization adopted a convention which now acts as a principal guideline for governments around the world to counter child labor. And after all, we are gathered here today in the country of the most honorable Mahatma Gandhi, a source of inspiration for the entire world, who said, if we are to teach real peace in this world, and if we are to carry on a real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children. So I look forward to working with you and learning from you in the next 2 days to find solutions that will lead to concrete improvements, be it in the realms of education or media or policy. It is by offering alternatives to apartheid that Mandela put an end to it in South Africa. And it is by working relentlessly to bring about a culture of peace in the manner that our friend President Ramaphosa and his government were able to break the cycle of violence in Timor-Leste. There is ample proof that change can happen, and our humanity, our children, and their future depends on our success in helping bring about this change. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Your Highness. I now have the pleasure of inviting Her Royal Highness, Princess Laurentien of the Kingdom of Netherlands, and UNESCO Special Envoy on Literacy for Development to make her special remarks.
Dear children, filling the empty seats at every table. Mr. President, since we bring so much more than our official titles and roles to this summit, please allow me to call everyone dear friends. I share all the wise words spoken before me, but it is you, children, on the empty seats that I want to address, and I would like to listen to you. I want to listen to your stories, to your dreams, to your perspectives. I want to hear from you what the most compelling arguments are to convince all leaders of countries, of cities, of institutions, of companies to implement the rights that you have. And indeed, you have 54 rights in this convention. It is our duty to protect you when you're vulnerable in any situation. But you, children, your power goes way beyond the rights that you have. You have the moral power. You have the power of authenticity. You have the power of innovative thinking that we have lost. Your most important power and sources of power are the freedom of mind and participation and ability to speak out. We adults, we have the wealth, very often the laws, and the facts needed to address the pressing issues we're discussing at this summit. So the question that keeps me awake at night is that how come, despite all that, we have not been able to address and tackle this issue at large scale so far? And I'd like to share with you two spots of intervention. One, it's the minds of adults. And two, it's the institutions, the systems, and the priorities that we've set for ourselves. First, on the minds of adults. Children, I'm ashamed. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry we've come this far. I'm sorry we make you think that we have all the answers. And I'm sorry that we teach you to become just like us. I'm sorry that we beat the dreams and the creativity that you have out of you through the educational approaches that we often take. I'm sorry that we've been unable to stop the demand side for child labor, exploitation, and to tackle the supply sides. And I'm sorry for the institutional neglect and ignorance and indifference that we've shown. And finally, I'm sorry, children, that the wealthy and powerful of this planet are apparently so comfortable that we have not seen the urgency to act. And I truly believe that for as long as we adults have and see no reason to change our minds and actions and see children and young people as equal human capital and unrivaled assets of our societies, we will continue to get our priorities wrong. So you should probably ask us, adults, you should ask us, what do your efforts lead up to? There's not one simple answer, and that's perhaps the problem. We need all concerted efforts and make sure that they add up to something and monitor actual results and not just activity monitoring. We need indicators to show what the outcomes of our efforts are. And perhaps the most difficult thing for us adults is that we need to challenge our own thinking. And most of all, we need to enable platforms to empower you, children and young people, to speak out yourselves and demand the change. There are three levels that I'd like to briefly touch on. At micro level, what I do is I install boards of children in companies. They're like Trojan horse for change. We have now 75 companies who are actually having a kids council like that. and I see through the dialogue with you, children, how incapable adults are to open up to children. It is difficult. We need more of those, and we need to scale that up. At institutional level, demand that children and young people get an equal say at the table, not as an afterthought, but an equal say. For example, as the Sustainable Development Goals process. That is what inclusiveness means. It means we need to formulate our policies and our measures with young people and children, not for them. And at global level, we need to use the full potential of digital technologies to rally support and break supply chains. Finally, thank you, Kailash Satyarthi, for bringing us together in this magnificent place. And children, we tend to label you as future generations. I think that's only half of the story. You are our main assets now. You are our equal stakeholders. And so we usually take the words of Albert Einstein: those with the privilege to know have the duty to act. But my final message is to you, children: teach us adults to find the alignment again between power, knowledge, and morality. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Highness. I would now like to invite His Excellency José Ramos Horta, former President of Timor-Leste, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1996, to share his perspectives.
Excellency, President of India, Shri Kailash Satyarthi, 1994 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Mrs. Sumedha Kailash, honorable members of government and parliament, His Holiness Dalai Lama, Her Excellency Lorena Castillo de Varela, First Lady of the Republic of Panama, Your Highnesses, former Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard, colleagues, Nobel laureates, Mrs. Carrie Kennedy Cuomo, President of Robert Kennedy Human Rights, members of the diplomatic corps and international organizations, esteemed ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. President, for hosting us in your workplace, for taking the time to be with us and inspire us and the world to continue our collective mission to eliminate the scourge of child labor and child poverty from our world. Words do not suffice to commend and thank you, Shri Kailash Satyarthi and Mrs. Sumedha Kailash, your daughter, Priyanka Ribu, and your son, Bhuwan Ribu, their respective spouses, and the staff of your foundation for your compassion, courage to free all children from child labor and slavery. I thank you all for inviting us here. I particularly thank you, Kailash, for taking the time to be with us in my country, Timor-Leste, in October, when you and Auntie Sumedha Kailash, sorry for calling you Auntie, I feel you are my auntie, and other fellow laureates in the fields of peace and sciences to share with us your extraordinary rich experiences, share with our leaders, our students, and youth. That in times of peace, in these times we still grapple with the child labor and child slavery, cannot but be an indictment of all of us. We community leaders, we confessional leaders, we national and world leaders. Do we blame the poor and dispossessed parents who send off their precious children to work long hours and often in harsh and dangerous conditions in order to earn some extra cents for the rest of the family? Do we condemn the poor and wretched parents who sell off their children into slavery and marriage to unscrupulous adults. National governments and legislative bodies have the primary responsibility to develop and put in place binding legislative frameworks and enforcement mechanisms aiming at effectively prohibiting child labor and child slavery. However, we must be sensitive and be ready to respond to the challenges faced by many poorer countries that are too financially constrained to create alternative means of livelihood for the extremely poor sectors of their society, a condition that gives rise to the abominable phenomenon of child labor and child slavery. The world is facing unprecedented economic, financial, social, and political challenges. We witness rising intolerance, racism, and violence in most of the industrialized countries. Demagogues are elected into public office by demonizing refugees, immigrants, Muslims, Arabs, and Jews, and making untenable promises of simplistic solutions to complex problems and to problems of unemployment, extreme poverty, and inequality. Politicians succumb to pressure and opt for quick fix remedies, as it always happened in times of economic difficulties. Again, with the onset of the 2008-2009 financial crisis, they opted for draconian cuts in their contribution to the global effort to combat poverty. Since 2008 and 2009, we have seen the traditional OECD countries' contribution to overseas development assistance being dramatically reduced and threatened with extinction. This will inevitably further impact on fragile countries emerging from conflict and struggling to heal wounds, to reconcile and build societies and state institutions, and deliver peace dividends to their traumatized people. While we must redouble our commitment in the fight to free all children from extreme poverty, child labor, and slavery, we must also redouble efforts to care for the youth and children, boys and girls, victims of fratricidal wars in Syria, South Sudan, Central African Republic, to mention a few out of the too many conflicts raging in the world. And let us not forget the tragic fate of the Palestinian children and youth, boys and girls, living under harsh occupation, denied their right to self-determination and full sovereignty within internationally recognized borders. From my reading of available information, the international community has failed to deliver adequate financial and humanitarian assistance to care for the hundreds of thousands of refugees scattered in vast camps in Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey. I had the privilege of visiting Jordan in November as guest of Prince Ali bin Al Hussein and the Princess Rim Brahim Ali. One of my many memorable experiences was the visit to the Zaatari camp, 2 miles from the Jordanian-Syrian border, home to 90,000 refugees. While life is never normal in refugee camps, I was impressed with the situation of almost normality in the camp. I saw countless children, boys and girls, going to and from schools. Being there, not far away from the horrors of the war, I was impressed in seeing how these young boys and girls seem to have overcome their nightmares. This gives us hope in the midst of the enormously complex, dangerous challenges we face throughout the world, and in particular in the region. It gives us hope that with goodwill and determination, partnership among all in the international community, we can do good to some. We can achieve total eradication of child labor and child slavery in our lifetime. This is not a hugely complex and insurmountable challenge. It requires political will, dogged determination, partnership between public and private entities, national and international institutions. As Brother Kailash says, child labor should be replaced by the unemployed youth. On child labor, slavery, there cannot be compromise. It is abominable, immoral, and must be combated. National legislations and practical mechanisms for implementation must be adopted. Financial technical assistance must be mobilized to assist countries that have adopted national legislation and implementation mechanisms and yet unable to deliver because of their financial constraints. May God, the Almighty and the Merciful, bless all the good women and men in their noble mission to offer freedom and dignity for all children of all regions of the world, of all cultures and religions. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. And last, but not the least, we call upon our child delegate, Mr. Imtiaz Ali, to share his thoughts with us.
Namaste and good morning. My name is Imtiaz. I am 16 years old. About 5 years ago, I was rescued by Bachpan Bachao Andolan from a garment factory in New Delhi. My story is not unusual. I was just one in millions of my brothers and sisters who never went to school, who never knew freedom. But today, I stand tall before the noblest of our leaders as the voice of those millions. And the voice of those millions I will be. I have questions. I ask them of myself as I work for 16 hours a day in a closed dark room. I ask them of my parents when I met them after 2 years. I ask them of the people who come to help my family and me. And today, I bring them to you. How much the longer are we to wait? What is taking so long? What can I do to help? I believe that today I am closer to finding my answers. The combined will of this room can change the world. And I look around. I feel hopeful. I am here joining you for today and tomorrow for the finding of for the finding a way for every child in the world to be in school and for no child to be enslaved. Let my freedom will be a weapon to fight for the freedom of my brothers and sisters. Thank you for coming here for us. As we proceed today with knowledge and ideas and with promises, please know that we, the children, are listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Imtiaz. We express our deepest appreciation to the Honorable President of India and all our royal dignitaries on the dais for the meaningful and important perspectives that set the context for the ensuing discussions during the Laureates and Leaders for Children Summit 2016. As we conclude our inaugural session, may I request all of you to remain in your places while our Honorable President leaves the dais. May I now request all of you to please stand for the national anthem. While our dignitaries leave the dais, we take the day ahead with a thematic dialogue session. I would like to request all laureates and leaders to take their places at the round tables in order to preside over the circles for freedom, lend voices to our children. Over the next 45 minutes, these smaller circles for freedom will discuss, debate, and consider specific solutions to pertinent challenges that bridle childhood freedom, channelizing compassion through critical opportunities that exist in the world today. Discussions will be thematic, ranging from access to justice, role of business and youth, tapping innovation and technology, creating child-friendly communities, and a coordinated, holistic approach to end child exploitation.